Agora deu. Agora sim. Boa tarde a todos.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our session here for Q&A. Thank you all for your participation. Just to remind you all that we publish our earnings and documentation on our website in CVM with all of the results about the third quarter and also a video showing all the slides of this presentation with details about each of these initiatives, our results, our cash flow, and our short and long-term visions of the company. First of all, we would like to quickly go over a recap with the main messages we tried to share during the presentation and also during all of our materials. Let's move on with the slides. So to the first slide, let's start off with some accountability here on our plan that we presented on the 10th of August. We had presented a plan that was very bold for 1 billion reais and many different initiatives. And now we're going to bring in some important advances with all of these different initiatives. So first, all of the levers are on time or even being done a little before what was originally planned for our transformation plan. So our business management model is already considering the new levels of margin and cash flows, which is fundamental for our transformation throughout the next quarters. A reduction of the stocks, which took place quicker than what we imagined. From those 1 billion reais, we were able to bring in over 70% already in the third quarter. Our forecast was half in the third one and half in the fourth one. And so reduction of stock also with the SKUs that really generate value, have strong turnovers and good margins, and the total reduction was 1.5 billion if we compare the third quarter of 22 with 23. So we're talking about reaching 90 days. We reached 89 days of stock. We haven't had a worsening, just actually there's an improvement. Stores are very well supplied, and this is fundamental, so we don't have any kind of negative impacts on our sales and stock. So third place, we're really prepared for Black Friday. When we look at the high turnover stock with good quality, that's new and fresh, we're even a little better than in the past. The big reduction was the products that have a lower turnover and a little more age in our stock. So this is very relevant, and the total impact on the cash appears in the next few months, where you have the payment terms for the suppliers. We've reduced this. The third point is the reduction of the 6,000 positions, and so we've already brought in some personnel gains, but the full contribution will take place from the fourth quarter onwards. Marketing expenses with more efficiency, and so here you have efficiency that went up a lot. If we see the marketing investments on the revenue, we reduced this by 30%. So very relevant efficiency gains and focusing on core and what generates value. Important to mention that in some channels in the such as the marketplace, where we reduced investments, they continue to grow, considering the strength of the company's brand and our organic growth as well. We've been really working towards increasing our organic growth and SEOs so we can have a healthier revenue. Then when it comes to reviewing our store footprint, we had 38 store closings, and we already adjusted 3 DCs. And so stores are on time and full, and DCs are taking a little longer, but the rest of the stores will do after Black Friday and Christmas, which are high seasonality periods where we're going to try to burn off some stock and have higher performance. So migrating some of the categories with negative margins from 1P to 3P, that's also on time, and we're migrating to 3P very well without too much of a loss in sales in the third quarter. And then another really important point, which is the launch of the first FIDC by Grupo Casas Bahia. So this is for the Buy Now Pay Later system, the crediário. We filed it on CDM or SEC, and now we already have our pilot project with 5 stores operating in this funding model. It will allow us to migrate with our full bank limits funded through the CDC to FIDC throughout time. So we're going to be working on the rollouts to all of the stores, and we should be operating this full first quarter onwards. So then the reduction of 405 million, considering the monthly seasonality, will already be migrated to
Destaco aqui também a monetização de
providing a lot
ativos
of
monetários, que
flexibility by
continua
the lead manager of the
conforme
company. Also,
vinha
the
nos outros
monetization of
trimestres, veio até um
some
pouquinho melhor, 663 milhões
tax
foi a monetização
issues, and
aqui nesse
it was
trimestre.
about
Finalizando num
636
follow-on de
million, which was the
722
net
milhões de reais, importante aí para esses
follow-on of
desafios de curto prazo, então que deram
622 reais,
fôlego para a
which is important
companhia
for the
e
short-term
permitiu a
challenge
gente
to
terminar
give
com a
us some
mesma
room
posição de caixa do trimestre
to
anterior,
continue with the same
mesmo com
cash
a redução dos
previous
limites de
quarter,
CDCI,
even with
que
the
foram
reduction
feitas pelos
limits of
bancos
the
lá no início do
CDCI
ano, né? Mas você vai perdendo o
with the
limite à medida
banks
que
in the
você vai
past,
pagando a
and
amortização
this as
daqueles
you pay the
transações de crediário que
amortization
foram feitas ano
of
passado, prazo médio de 14 meses. Então, ao
repetitive
longo dos meses, você vai pagando
transactions
o
with an
antigo e
average
não
price
entra
of
um
14
novo
months,
daqueles
and
bancos que
over the
cortaram o
months you
limite.
pay
Então,
the
isso
off the
aqui,
old loans, and you don't have
parte
any
da
ones with
redução
the banks that cut
de
down the
caixa nosso,
limits.
né,
So
é operacional e parte é essa
part of
redução de
this
limite, mais ou menos meio a meio.
is
O
operational, and
CAPEX
part of
já
this is a
conseguimos
reduction of
ajustar o
the
nosso plano
limits.
de
So the
investimento, já
capex,
conseguimos
we've
fazer
already
uma
been able to
redução
adjust in our investment
importante, mais
plan.
de
We had a
60% de
reduction
redução
that
do
was very
CAPEX, e é um
significant, over
CAPEX sustentável para a
60%.
companhia quando a gente
And
pensa
this is a
nos em torno
sustainable
de
capex
400
for the
milhões de
company. When
reais
you think
que a gente
about
comunicou no
400
mesmo
million
link
reais that
postal
we
antigamente.
communicated
Isso aqui
instead of
é
1
bem
billion we were spending
sustentável para
previously,
focar no
and
core da companhia,
this is
focar
super
bastante em
sustainable.
UX,
Focus on
em
the company's
SEO e
core
também em alguns processos
UX,
logísticos que
SEO,
são, sem
and
dúvida
some
nenhuma, uma
other
vantagem
logistical
competitiva para
optimizations
permitir o
that are
crescimento da
definitely
companhia.
going to be a
E um
competitive
reconhecimento
advantage to allow
importante,
for the
pela
company's
18ª
growth.
vez
And
consecutiva,
another bit of
a gente foi
important
reconhecido pela
recognition,
Casas
which
Bahia,
was
reconhecido como Top of
um,
Mind em
the
lojas
Casas
de
Bahia
móveis
brand as
eletrodomésticos pela
total
Folha. Então,
top of
é um
mind in
reconhecimento bastante
home
importante que reforça o
appliances
valor
and
da marca, todo o
stores. So that's
potencial
really
da
strong
companhia.
recognition, reinforcing the
Dito isso,
company's
reforço mesmo, está andando
brand,
bem. Eu pulo
brand
para o próximo slide para
potential.
trazer aqui o principal
And
foco da companhia.
having said
Esse
that, the
slide
plans
do
moving
fluxo de
along well.
caixa
So the main
direto,
focus of the
a gente
company
colocou um
with
demonstrativo para
the
todo mundo poder
indirect
acompanhar
cash
a
flow,
transformação e os
we brought in this
impactos do plano de
demonstration that everyone
transformação
can
do
keep
fluxo de
up with
caixa,
the
os impactos do
transformation
nosso
and
plano
the
aqui no fluxo de caixa da companhia.
transformation process,
Lembrando que
its
como plano
impacts in our
norte, né, das
plans
nossas ações, os
and cash flow
objetivos
of the company.
desse
So all
primeiro
of
ano de
the
trabalho, eles são
objectives of this
voltados
first
para
year
a
of
melhoria
work
do fluxo de caixa.
are really
Quando a gente
focused on
olha o fluxo de
improving our
caixa
cash
das
flows.
operações, né,
When you
ele
look
vem
at this
positivo,
cash
492
flow,
milhões de reais.
uh,
Aí tem que pegar todas
it's
as atividades de
positive.
arrendamento, tirar também a parte de capex nossa, e você chega no
We
fluxo
also,
livre. E o que é o nosso objetivo? É o fluxo de caixa livre acima do pagamento de
here
juros.
we have the free
Então é
cash
isso que o
flow.
plano de transformação vai trazer. E aí, obviamente, tem outras alavancas para
This is
trazer
what the
de geração de
transformation
valor. Mas o
plan
primeiro objetivo é
is
trazer o
bringing in,
break-even aqui.
and
Então,
the
quando a
first
gente olha
objective
o resultado do trimestre,
is
nós
to
já
bring
temos
in the break even.
consciência
So
dos
when we look at the
desafios
focus
de
of the
curto
quarter, we're
prazo da
super
companhia
aware of
e
the
temos um plano
challenges
robusto
that we
para
have in
transformar
short
esse
term,
fluxo de caixa.
and
Falando
we have
nesse
this
plano
robust
robusto, vamos pular
plan
para
to
o próximo
transfer this
slide,
cash flow. And as
que
we
a
talk
gente
about
fala
this
do plano de
robust
transformação.
plan,
Aqui, lembrando,
we're
né,
going to be
nesse ajuste,
discussing
nós
the
apresentamos essa
transformation
primeira
plan.
coluna
And
ali
so
do 10 de
on
abril,
the
do
10th of
impacto
August,
total de 1
we did
bilhão de
the first
reais
column and the total
no
impact
LAIR,
of
né, da
1 billion
companhia, no
reais
EBIT da companhia.
in the
E agora nós estamos
EBIT of
trazendo
the company.
novas alavancas
And
que somam mais
now we're bringing in new
460
levers
milhões
that
de
will
reais.
add
Temos
up
quase
to another
500 milhões de
460
reais.
million.
Aqui tem várias
So
alavancas menores, tá? Mas as duas
here we
alavancas
have some
grandes
other
que eu gostaria de destacar.
smaller levers,
A
but two
primeira,
big
penetração
important
de
ones I want to
serviços.
highlight,
A parte de
which is
serviços
first
com garantia
penetration of
estendida, seguro de
services.
furto e
As I
roubo, a
mentioned,
parte de
extended
instalação dos
warranty,
eletrodomésticos, isso tem uma
insurance,
margem
and
muito boa.
installation,
Nós
home
fizemos um
appliances.
piloto
This has a really
para
good margin. So
verificar, né, as melhores
we had this
práticas de venda,
pilot
de
to
conversão desse
verify
serviço,
what are the
e
best
agora nós estamos
practices for
replicando para
sales
todas
and
as lojas
conversions.
e encontramos um
And now we're
potencial
going
ainda
to
está
be
longe de ser o potencial
replicating the
máximo da
stores.
companhia, mas é o
It's
potencial da
far
gente
from being the
trazer
full
uma
potential of the
penetração um
company, but
pouquinho melhor
we
do
want
que
to
está
bring in
agora,
the
e a
situation,
gente consegue gerar 200 milhões a mais de
and then we'll be
receita
able to generate about 200 million more in
com
revenue
serviços, que será bastante
with the
importante para o
services
nosso
that
longo
it's going
prazo.
to be
Então,
very
aqui,
important
muito
for our
importante, quando olha para o
habit.
custo variável,
So here,
a gente, esse
when
é o
variable
mais objetivo da
cost,
companhia, tá? Então, ele é
this is
praticamente chega lá
what's
no limite
left
que
to the
chamamos de
company.
impostos.
So
Custos variáveis, a gente também tem
almost
uma
what
alavanca
reaching
importante,
the
que é a
habit
revisão dos
except for
contratos
the
indiretos.
taxes, right?
Nós
Then you have
fizemos
the revision
workshops
of the
revisando todos os
indirect
contratos
contracts. We
indiretos
had
da
some
companhia
workshops
e
reviewing all
agora
the
implantamos também uma
indirect
torre de
contracts with
controle
company. Now we deploy
permanente para avaliar
the
todas as
permanent
direções de
control
compra.
tower to
Então, a gente
assess all of
centralizou a
the
emissão de decisão de compra, tinha muita
RFPs.
gente que tinha acesso
So
às
we
regras, mas
centralized
agora
this. We
somos
had a
duas
lot of people
pessoas por
that could
diretoria,
create
ou de uma a
RFPs.
três
Now we
pessoas
have
por
less people
diretoria,
that can do
e
this, like
todas as
one to three
requisições acima de 100 mil
people
reais passam por um
per
comitê. A
board,
gente tem
and
membros
all
do
of those that
C-Level
go over $100,000. You have members of the C-level in this committee to assess if this RFP is really necessary. And if you have a project, when we have a report sent to me and I can veto some of these hires that I don't think are relevant for the committee at this moment. We have a lot of opportunities and we're being quite conservative. We have a reduction in these indirect costs as well. So over time, the full capturing of these levers will probably take place around the end of 2024. So as we cancel these contracts, we'll have some renewals as well, and most of them you have to wait for the contract to finish, so you don't pay fines, and then you bring in major savings. Having said this, I want to mention a really interesting point. We're in November, we have Black Friday going on, we're just missing a few days, and then we have um, a really interesting shift when we talk about reinforcing Casas Bahia to focus on core and this total dedication to you and your unity and what the impact would be for the campaign, this brand shift. It was a huge impact. Your team's super engaged. I want to invite you all to visit our stores. Besides the unforgettable conditions, you'll see the level of engagement, energy, and the connection to customers, which was impressive. The amount of messages, people seeing the company more, all those saying, because there's this total dedication to you, which already provides this connection. And Grupo Casas Bahia is already connected to this level of stock. I've already talked about that a lot. So the store is really full of products. We're going to have a Black Friday. It's going to be great. We'll be exploring all of the omnichannel advantages, and the main difference is that all of retail is more rational, considering the macroeconomic challenges, and we don't have this excessive stock issue. So when you look at the issue, the last Black Friday sales were really high because there's a point in time when you have to sell. But we're not at the level yet, and we've already burned off the excessive balance, and we have a healthy stock. So it'll be more rational. We have important advantages, and we'll bring of sales and incentives. Pretty good Friday, but it's going to be rational where you look in terms of positive margins and actually generate that. So it's going to be great. And of course, we always have to look at the fourth quarter with the first quarter. It's great, but in the first quarter, so coming into profitability with Black Friday, we're excited. And we've already launched it today on TV. It's a gift for Black Friday. So we're talking about our short-term vision here, and here we're getting into Q&A. What we want to reinforce. Very robust this plan, so we want to reach 2 billion tons to allow for some creation and execution, because 1.5 billion is enough to find positive free cash flow. And then, of course, we'll bring in other levers in 2025, and the company will search for possibilities to bring reference when it comes to royalty and retail. So the transformation plan is doing very well. Even a little better than what I expected, with possibility to advance a bit more on certain levels. Second point, we have a lot of support from the management team of the short-term challenges. We saw cash flow, we have this cash flow that's pretty good. And we have some liability challenges. And all of these are part of our plan, which are really in line with these current institutions. That will transform the company. When we talk more about the end of 2024, we're already searching for profitability that's in line with our long-lasting sustainability, allowing for us to, in 25, deliver profitability that's really good and a good return on invested capital, and that this is really good upsides when it comes to allowing for some investments. So our focus here is really concentrated in the short term. So I want to highlight that there is a possibility for some targets. And so some levers are doing a little better. It could maybe before. And so maybe that could be a little better. We're trusting on our confidence in this transformation plan and our strong alliance also with our suppliers and partners that have really been leveraging our sales, and we're going to be supporting core levers. And so these are really good, and we're going to be able to really position ourselves even more in leaders in. And then, of course, we have cash flow.
e que
That's
deixa a
what we're
gente
very
aí
confident about.
confiante para passar por esse
And
desafio de
that,
curto
of
prazo
course,
e começar a colher os frutos desse plano de
we can
transformação
start
lá no
reaping
final de
the fruits of this
2024. Então, muito
transformation
obrigado a
plan
todos
at the
pela
end of
presença
2020. So
e
thank you all
agora
for your
começar a
presence.
ter
And now
a sessão de
we'll
perguntas e
begin with
respostas
the
e estamos
Q&A
aqui
session.
também com o Sérgio,
And
nosso
we also have
CRI, o
Sergio,
Elcio, nosso
our
CFO,
investor
o Gabriel,
relations,
nosso head de
Elsie, our
TI aí,
CFO,
para
and Gabriel,
poder
our
poder
investor relations
interfalar.
head,
Muito obrigado a todo mundo.
to be able to
Gabriel, você
answer
puxa
any
as perguntas?
questions. Thank you all so much. Gabriel,
Olá,
do you have,
Renato, tudo
can
bem? Boa
you
tarde a todos.
gather those
Nossa
questions?
primeira
Okay, good
pergunta vai ser
afternoon,
do
everyone. My
Pedro,
first
do
question is
Bradesco.
from
Pedro,
Pedro from
pode prosseguir.
Bradesco, and Pedro, you may proceed.
Agora foi, eu acho, né? Valeu,
Oh,
turma.
I think it
Obrigado
moved.
por pegar minha pergunta, tá? Valeu pela
Um,
apresentação, Renato. Bom falar com
Thanks
você.
for the
Aqui eu tenho
presentation.
duas perguntas rápidas do meu lado, né? Uma mais, enfim, mais
We
macro,
have
outra
two
mais micro
questions.
aqui. A primeira que eu queria saber é entender um pouco do
The
apetite do
first one
consumidor
is
nas
about
categorias, né?
the
A
type
gente,
for the
já tendo
consumers in the core
passado esses
categories.
primeiros 40 dias aí
After these
do quarto
first
trimestre,
40
né? A gente
days
fez
in our
o
fourth
câmbio de
quarter,
juros na ponta, né? Se
with
a
a
gente
drop in
vê
the
algum
interest
impacto
rates,
nessa categoria de ticket mais alto, mais
do you see any
dependente de
kind of
crédito,
impact
mesmo a
with
gente
higher
vendo agora
tickets and
diante de
more
Black
dependent
Friday, a
on
gente já
credit?
sente
Um,
o sentimento
and
melhorando
so
aqui, tá? Essa
if you
é a
feel
primeira
like
pergunta.
anything
E a
getting
segunda
better,
é um
that's the first
pouco
question.
sobre essa dinâmica de caixa nesse
And
quarto tri, né? A
then
gente
a
viu
bit of the
alguns avanços
cash
importantes
dynamic
no
in the
plano de
fourth quarter.
transformação
So we saw some
no terceiro
important
tri. A gente sabe
advances
que
in
assim
the
como você falou, um
transformation
ciclo
plan.
sazonalmente mais forte,
We
nesse
know
nessa
it's a little
de
shorter
working cap aqui. Não sei se tem alguma coisa a
when
ser
it comes to the
monetizada também.
dynamic
Então,
for
se
working
você puder dar alguma
capital.
cor sobre a trajetória
And so
aqui
if you could give us some color
de caixa no curto prazo, seria legal também.
of
Obrigado,
the
pessoal.
cash in the short term, that would be great.
Pronto. Opa, voltou. Obrigado.
So,
Desculpa aí,
yeah, okay, and I think now we're back. So,
Obrigado aí pelas perguntas.
audio, but
Primeiro, o
thanks for
seguinte,
the
a gente ainda não
questions.
tem o sentimento
First
de
of all,
melhora
we still don't have
na
this
demanda.
feeling
Quando
of
a
like
gente
an
olha até, a
improvement
gente
in
mostra lá
demand
o
when
impacto
we
em vendas no terceiro tri
actually show you
e
impact on
o market
sales in the
share.
third quarter
Então, quando a gente
and
vê,
the
a
market
gente
share.
continua ganhando
When you
market
see
share
that, we
mês a
continue
mês,
to
mas
gain
mesmo
share
com a
month
loja
over month.
bastante resiliente, né,
But
mantendo
even with
o mesmo
stores
volume
being
de
very
venda e
resilient,
no
kind of
online
keeping up
perdendo
the
venda.
volume of
Quando a
sales
gente olha
and
mesmo nas
online
categorias core,
losing sales.
essa
So when you
demanda
look at the core
continua
categories, this one
bastante pressionada
continues
e sem
very
ainda uma
pressured
perspectiva de melhora no curto
and
prazo.
not
Então, a
much of
gente fez o
a
plano de
perspective
transformação
on
considerando
improvement
esse
in the short
cenário
term. So we have
ruim
a
e ele
transformation
está se
plan considering
confirmando.
this bad
A
scenario.
nossa expectativa
And
é que
this
a
is
gente veja
confirming
alguma
itself,
melhora lá no
and
segundo
our
semestre de
expectation is
24.
to see
Não
some
temos
kind of an
previsão de ver
improvement in the
melhora
second semester
do ponto de vista
of
macro
2024.
em
We
termos
have
de
no
crédito ao consumidor
perspectives of
antes
improvements
disso.
from a
Claro
macro
que a redução de
perspective when it
juros
comes to
ajuda
credits for
e algumas
consumers.
alavancas,
So of course,
maneira
the
como a
drop in
FIT,
interest rates
ela ajuda,
helps,
porque ela
and
destrava para a gente
so
aproveitar um pouco mais o crescimento e poder
this
aí
helps also
usar um
to
pouquinho a renda
unleash the
como
pineapple
crediário.
a little
Mas do
more
ponto de vista de demanda, a
and
gente continua
maximize
vendo o
the
mesmo
sales.
cenário, tanto
But
em
from a
imóveis como
demand
eletrodomésticos,
perspective,
telefonia,
we still see the same
bastante
kind of
comprimida.
scenario in properties, home appliances,
Dito isso,
refrigerants, all
vamos de
very
cor para o
pressured.
quarto trimestre. O que
Now,
a gente
they
está vendo no
asked us
quarto
to give us
trimestre?
a
Como a gente falou,
little
né?
color on
A
the
gente
fourth
quer usar o
quarter.
ano de
What we've seen
2023 para
is
arrumar
we
a
want to
casa
use
toda.
2023
Então, vocês
to
viram ali que a gente fez até algumas previsões,
improve
talvez
processes. So we
um
even
pouco
had
mais
some
conservadoras
provisions
do que
that
poderia
are
ser
maybe a little
num
more
cenário mais normal, porque a
conservative
gente não
than
quer deixar
we
nenhum
have in a
risco
normal scenario
para 2024.
because we don't want
Então, o quarto
to
tri é
have
um
any
tri
risks
melhor,
in
como você
2024. So
colocou,
it's
então
a
tem uma
better quarter,
sazonalidade
as you
favorável, a
mentioned.
gente tem a Black, tem
There's
novembro
a
forte, tem
favorable
Natal, então isso tudo
seasonality.
ajuda. Então é um
We have
tri melhor.
Christmas and
Do
everything.
ponto de vista de
So it is
margem
better.
líquida, ele não é um
Then
tri
from
que a
a
gente
margin
trouxe ali com
perspective,
referência.
it's
A
not
gente ainda tem
going to be a
ajustes de costos para
reference
fazer, ainda
necessarily,
tem
but
o
we do
impacto
have
do
some
lucro para
write-offs
acontecer,
and
acho que
we have the
30% do
impact of the
saldo
costs.
ainda
We have
vai ser vendido
30%
no
of
quarto
the
tri.
balance that will still
A
be
Black Friday
sold
a
in
gente
the
vai
fourth
usar para
quarter.
algumas oportunidades de
Black
ajustes,
Friday
os
we'll
bancos
use
também
for
precisam,
some
e também tem desconto adicional, isso
opportunities
também penaliza
for
um pouco a margem. Então,
adjustments,
quando a gente olha para o
where
quarto
we also have
trimestre, ainda
some
não é um tri
additional
onde eu estou muito
discounts. And when
preocupado
we look at the
com
fourth quarter, it's still not
DRE da
so
companhia. Estou
concerning
preocupado com o fluxo de
uh,
caixa. Como vocês viram, a
with
gente
the
vem
income
já
statement of the company.
tentando
We're just
trazer
concerned about
algumas
the cash
melhorias
flow.
para o caixa. Então, a
But we
redução
do
de custos foi
start seeing
bastante
some
material
improvements in the
e a gente vai
cash. The
continuar
cash
fazendo
reduction was
algumas
very
ações para melhorar o
significant,
nosso caixa
and we will
e preparar a
continue to
companhia
have
para
some
iniciar 2025 de uma
improvements
maneira muito positiva.
to
Então, o quarto tri,
the
ele
company
é
to
um
in
passo
a very
importante para a
positive
gente
way.
terminar de arrumar a
So it
casa
is a very
e
important step to help organize the game start off at another pace. And it's important to mention that We're talking
colaboradores,
about a
44
very
bi
big
de GMV, assim, é uma
so
companhia
we have
meio sem lógica.
44
Você não transforma a companhia em um
and you
trimestre.
don't
São
transform the
alguns
company in a
trimestres
single
para fazer
quarter.
esse plano. Por
So
isso
you
que a gente
have to
chamou o
have a
plano,
few
lembra que a gente chamava o
quarters.
plano de Via
That's why
2025.
we call it
Agora
the
é Casas
Via
Bahia
2025.
2025, mas é um plano
Now it's
onde a
Casas
gente vai
Bahia
transformando
2025,
a
but
companhia
it's
até
a
o
plan
final
where we're
de
going to transform the
2024, para
company
aí sim,
till the end of
2025,
2024
onde a nossa visão
to have
é
a
buscar ser referência em
2025
retornos
where
sobre
our vision
investimento no
is to
varejo.
be a
Então a gente
reference
quer
when it
sim
comes
entrar
to
bem arrumado. Para
return on
isso a gente
invested
quer
capital.
apresentar
So we really want to
tudo que
start off
puder
there.
consertar agora em 23,
And
para
whatever we can
24 ficar
fix
mais
up
limpo e aí
now,
sim começar a ter trimestres
we'll
pelo menos mais
do.
limpos, ainda não com benefício na
Then we'll have
totalidade
some
pela
cleaner
transformação, mas mais
quarters
limpos. E aí fica mais fácil de comparar primeiro TRI de
um,
24 com o primeiro TRI de 23 e ver a
that'll
evolução
make it a lot
do
easier.
segundo TRI com o segundo TRI, sem necessidade de
So
reforma,
the
sem
first
necessidade de
one
ajuste
and
nenhum,
then the
porque a
second
gente exclui
quarter
os
without
que
a
são
need for
recorrentes.
adjustments
Então,
where we
o
would
nosso foco no quarto TRI
exclude these
é terminar de
non-recurring
arrumar a
items.
casa e, obviamente,
Our
poder
focus
acelerar a
is
venda onde a gente
to,
pode acelerar, mas muito foco em arrumar a
and
casa, em trazer essa
a big
disciplina para a gente
focus
entrar em
on
24
fixing
com
things up and
isso
having more
na
discipline in
mesa e aí
2024
fechar o
without
ano
any kind of
bem
risks,
confiante com esse plano.
and then
Obrigado.
continuing the plan that we're very confident about. Thanks.
Obrigado, Pedro. Nossa próxima
Thank you,
pergunta é
Pedro.
do Nicolas,
Now our
JP
next
Morgan.
question is from
Nico, por
Nicholas
favor.
of JP Morgan. Nico, please.
Obrigado, Suca. Obrigado, Renato, por pegar nossa
Thanks,
pergunta.
Suker. Thank you, Renato, for taking our
Eu tenho duas, na
question.
verdade. Você falou, Renato, que
We have
vocês
two
já estão
actually. Renato, you
implantando
talked
bastante
about
as
how
iniciativas
you're
dentro da
already deploying
reestruturação e do
many
serviço. Quais
initiatives in the
têm sido
restructuring plan, and you
as
also
mais
talked
fáceis
about
de
some
implementar
things
e
that were
executar no
maybe a little
momento?
easier to deploy
Entendo que você
over
conseguiu
time.
mapear ou
And I want to
definir
know if
algumas
you
das
were able to
características
map
no
this
plano que
out
talvez
or
seriam
identify any
mencionadas ou
additional
alguma
risks
coisa
in
que
the plan that
fosse
you
mais
should
difícil
mention,
de
or
executar dentro
something that
do
maybe was a little more
planejamento,
difficult
né?
to execute
E
within
minha segunda
the
pergunta é
plan.
do lado dos
And my
fornecedores,
second
como que
question
tem
is from a
evoluído as
supplier
conversas agora
perspective.
que a linha
How
tá,
has
tá rodando
these
como
conversations
uma estrutura um
evolved
pouquinho menor
now that
ou bastante menor que
VIA
o
has a
tradicional
structure level that's a lot lower
no
than
passado, né? Obrigado.
what it had
Bacana.
in the
Vamos lá,
past?
Nico.
Thank you
Do
very
ponto de vista de
much.
risco, de
Well,
complexidade, né,
Nico,
a
from
alavanca
a
mais
risk and
complexa
complexity
que a gente
perspective, the
tinha
most complex
era o
lever
FDIC, né? Então,
that
o
we
FDIC,
had
quando a gente
was the
falou lançar,
FIDC.
muita gente, quando a gente colocou o nosso cronograma
When we talked about
de adoção
launching
em
it,
novembro, era um cronograma
a lot of
muito apertado.
people,
Assim, a gente precisou mudar
we
sistema,
had a
colocar
very tight
correspondente bancário em
schedule.
todas as lojas, garantia critério de fungibilidade, até para a
Um,
gente não ter realmente o dinheiro que entra para
so there
cada
was
loja cai no caixa do FDIC,
we
não no
would
caixa da
so the
companhia,
cash coming
foi
in
realmente
at
para o
the
banco
FIDC
e para os
level,
investidores terem um FDIC bastante seguro.
so that we can have an
Esse,
FIDC
acho
that's
que foi o
really
maior
safe.
desafio que a gente
And
teve aqui
so this was the
no
biggest
nível de complexidade.
challenge
Foi
we had
muito bem
here.
executado pelo
From a
time, com
complexity
parceria lá com a
perspective, it was
BTG e
really
tal, que a gente
well
conseguiu montar
implemented
um
by the
FDIC
team with the
que
partnership
hoje eu acho que
with
ele é a
TG, and we
referência
were
no
able to
mercado
set
do
up an
ponto de
FIDC
vista
that's
de
currently a
critérios
reference in
de
the market
segurança, de
when it
fungibilidade, para a
comes
gente
to
trazer ainda muita coisa de
criteria
prevenção de fraude,
and
mais
bringing in a
critérios de
lot of fraud
elegibilidade para o
prevention
crédito, para a gente ter
aspects,
mais
more
disciplina ainda
criteria
em
for
governança
even more
na disponibilização
discipline
de
and
crédito. Hoje a gente já tem
governance
um histórico
and the
muito
availability
positivo,
of credit.
mas isso tende a
Since we
trazer até
already
uma
have this very
performance um
positive
pouquinho melhor para o
history,
nosso
which would bring
crediário,
in performance
além
that's even a
da
little
questão do
better
funding
to
e
our
uma
buy now, pay
segurança para o
later
investidor.
besides the
Essa eu acho
funding
que estava o
issues
maior
and
desafio
also
nosso, foi
safety
onde a
for
gente
investors.
perdeu
That was the
mais
biggest
tempo
risk,
para poder
which
acertar
is
tudo que
where
tinha que
we
acertar, para a gente poder
wasted
ter
a bit
um
more
FDIC
time
agora
on
está
getting
bem
everything
encaminhado,
right
a
so
gente
we could
poder
have a good
pilotar e
FIDC, and
garantir que não
now
vai
things
ter
are
nenhum erro de
progressing very
sistema. A
well,
gente
and we
começou
should
o piloto ontem
guarantee that
e
we
a
have
gente
no
vai medir isso
mistakes
para
or
ver se tem que
errors on the
ajustar alguma
system.
coisa.
And
O
then
risco que existe
we'll
é
have to
um,
measure this
se
and see
tiver
if we
algum
need to
ajuste
adjust
assim, é como
things.
ter um
But
freeze de Black
if
Friday, um
there's any
freeze de Natal, onde eu não posso
adjustments,
fazer
like a freeze and
novas
Black
coisas para
Friday, or
produção, eu
that where
posso,
it
se
can't
tiver que
have more
ajustar alguma
stuff
coisa,
being
tentou, já fizemos
put
um
on
teste
for
para não
production.
ter.
If we need to
Mas se
adjust, maybe
tiver,
we
ele
have
acaba
some
atrasando um
tests
pouquinho
done. But
mais para
if
poder
necessary, it's gonna
consertar
kind
e
of get
acelerar o
them in the
rollout
way
para
a bit
todas as
more
lojas. O
to be
cronograma
able
básico
to
seria em
fix
janeiro
and
já estar com
accelerate
quase
the
todas
rollout
as
to all of
lojas
the
já
stores. But I hope that in
operando
January we'll have all
direitinho,
of the
o que vai
stores
permitir a
operating
gente migrar mais
with the
rápido do CDCI
FIGC
para o
financial
DCI.
instrument,
Se
which will
atrasar
allow
um
us
pouco, a
to
gente vai acabar
migrate a little
demorando um
quicker. If
pouco
it gets a
mais
little
para
later,
poder migrar,
we'll
pode
take
ser
a
que seja
bit
fevereiro,
longer
acho que é um
to be.
risco que
It
tem
could
na
be
mesa. Do ponto de
February. It's
vista
the
mais
risk that we have
estrutural,
to look at.
e aí não das
And from a
alavancas
structural
propriamente ditas,
perspective,
o risco que a gente
levers,
tem é realmente
The risk is really the operational leveraging. So we must work to make this all take place and improve our cash flow, and then keeping the relevance of the company in the core categories. When we continue to gain share and the market's pressured, that's going to be less of a structural impact. When these get back, we'll be able to capture even more growth. So that's going to help us. But then in the short term, we must measure rupture and losses because the discipline went into our stock with the opportunity to optimize risk, mix, sorry, being in a lot of impacts, and we need to monitor this to not have any additional ruptures. Things are going along well, under control. We're aware of the risks. We create daily monitoring of the risks so we can go through them, performing things well. And the team has been demonstrating excellent capacity and execution, and that makes me very confident that we're on track and that we'll really be able to have this big transformation over the next quarters. Great. Thank you, Nico.
Quando põe no mudo, não consegue tirar de novo. Então, é melhor quem está perguntando deixar sem mudo, se for replicar.
A próxima pergunta, Renato,
Our next
é do João.
Renato is from João from Citibank. João, you may proceed. Okay, thank you, Gabriel. Good afternoon, everyone. I wanted to explore this opportunity here with this question on the FIDC. Renato, what does this bring in as opportunities? It's very transformational for the company, right? We have this new funding source to provide credit to consumers. I understand that there's a process that's really interesting because you migrate the CDCI to the FIDC. And so I want to hear about the opportunities to capture sales through this new source of funding. And I want to understand, once you keep the coordination and you're saying that you have a potential to reach 1.5 billion in the FIDC, what would be the resources that you would be able to, they would need to keep the 20% subordination? And then I want to hear about cash generation also and talk about the net situation of the tax assets you had. So before you accumulated things, it kind of offsetted things and you didn't really see the monetization. So I want to actually hear about this and how this took place. Did you have to sell some assets, some tax assets, and what should we look at in the future? And then finally, sorry for going over time here, but I want to just mention, when do you think there's enough cash to pay off the rest of the debt? Okay, thank you, João. Great questions. And we'll start off with number one about the FIDC benefits. It's kind of what you mentioned. But after Elsie, we'll talk about this. It's, of course, a new way for us to capture businesses. We have 4 billion from banks, which are corporate credits with the Casas Bahia risk. We're funding high quality later, but for him, Casas Bahia, when you migrate this to an FIDC, the first thing that happens is flexibility with the banks to increase duration, reduce the capital costs, and even bring in some flexibility to have additional resources to reinforce working capital, since we'll have a more conservative cash policy. So there's a huge benefit. And from a sales perspective, as you mentioned, we are losing currently some sales, so there's still room being about 250 million in sales in the buy now, pay later. Of course, a little more, and if we consider the potential, it's a lot greater. So we're being more conservative in our credit discipline. Where do we want to grow? We want to grow and pre-approved in the best rating we have, where the rates are a little lower, profitability is a little lower, but the risks are practically zero. So it's a lot better than growing where the profit is really good, but you have a lot more risk depending on the variation in macro scenarios and economic conditions of those customers. So we do see a potential to sell more and penetrate more, especially in categories that suffered more, which were properties, which furniture, where we have a big penetration and major leadership, but that dropped a lot from a perspective of market demand due to access to credit. Consumers are postponing this when they're not in a comfortable position, there's not available credit. So the sum of low interest with FIDC funding will allow us to get back to growing in furniture and increasing our share. It's going to be very important for the company's margin. Now I'll let Elsie talk about the monetization aspects and then also about the cash flow of your third question here. We have a plan that in the second quarter of 24 we'll already cover this. So we look at cash burn in 23 and the free cash flow minus payment of interest, which is our main target. In 23,
ela já vai
big.
ser
We look at
muito maior.
24,
Então, as nossas
it's already
projeções
going to be a
para
lot
um negócio
smaller.
como
So
o 24, ele
our
ainda é
forecasts
positivo,
are like
mas será no final do
a
ano já
situation we're in
positivo.
24, it's still
E
negative,
aí, para a gente entrar
but
no
we have a
geral
more
caixa,
positive end of
lembrando
the
que
year,
de
and then we
24 para
start
cima a gente tem algumas
generating cash
transformações
from 24 to
importantes,
25. We
como
have
por
some
exemplo o legado
transformations really
trabalhista que
important,
acaba
such
e
as
outras coisas que
our
somam mais de
labor
1 bilhão
legacy
de
liabilities
liabilidade,
and other things that
sempre
add up to
dependente de
over
execução nossa,
1
né? Sempre
billion
impacta na
reais in
maturação
2025, regardless
das
of our
coisas que estão
execution.
ali
It's just
dentro
about
da
the
planejada
maturity
interna.
timing
Então a gente espera agora
that
no
it's
final do
already on
campeonato
track.
crescimento
So
bastante
we
diferente do que a gente viu
expect
de
that we'll have a
rodando
second
em
semester
outro
that's really
patamar.
different,
Vai ser
and we're
aí a gente
already
vai ver outra fase e vamos ter
operating in
outras
another
visões,
level.
outra estratégia de coisas
So we'll
legais aí
have
para
other
fazer que a gente
discussions of
está
cool
ainda
stuff
guardando
going
no
on
forno para na hora
that we're still
certa a gente
keeping in
poder
the
acelerar.
oven, so
Elton,
that whenever it's the right moment, we'll be able
tá
to
me
accelerate
começando a
with.
entregar um pouquinho do
Elsie, do you want
pedido.
to get into more details and bring in a little more on the FIDCs?
Tá mudo aí, não? A gente não
Are
consegue
you
se
on
escutar,
mute?
o host, por
Well,
favor,
we
desmuta
can't
o host,
open
por
up our
favor.
mic. So, host, can you please open up our mic?
Tudo bem, João? Obrigado,
Okay.
obrigado pela
Hey
pergunta. Eu
guys,
só queria
thank you for the
reforçar
question.
alguns pontos
And
que
so
Renato
I
já
wanted
foi
to reinforce some
exprimendo
points here
nos
from
detalhes
Renato,
adicionais.
and then
O
I'll
FDIC, ele é
get into
muito
details on
transformacional, como você
FIDC.
colocou, com 5
As you
bi vai liberar
mentioned,
limites de crédito.
with like
É
5
importante a
billion,
gente
it's going to
ressaltar
allow
que a
for credit limits. That's
rentabilidade
really
do FDIC
important to highlight
permanece
that
com a
the
companhia
profitability of the
através
FIDC
das cotas subordinadas.
remains with the
Toda a
company
diferença de
with these
spread
subordinate
que nós
quotas. So
temos
all the
com
difference
os
in the
clientes
spread
com
we have
juros e custo do câmbio
between what
e
we
a
have
toda a
versus the
inadimplência de
funding
grandes
costs and
permanece com a companhia
fall and losses
é,
remain with the company.
positiva no
So
nosso
that's really
resultado. Não tem
positive
alteração nesse
in our
aspecto, a não ser
results,
que
and you don't have any kind of
flexibilizar e
change
providenciar esse
in regards to this
crescimento,
unless you're
sinal
going to
que a gente pode
flexibilize
prosseguir
or
em
provide
relação.
additional
Acho que o
growth
segundo ponto
that we can
importante do
achieve. But
FDIC,
what
que é a estrutura que
I
foi
want to mention about
implementada,
the
e o Renato
FIDC, it's also
comentou
very
aqui que
important is the structure
pode
that
ser
was
um
built in,
modelo, etc.
which
A
mentions it
gente
could be
colocou,
the
dedicou muito
model.
tempo e
We
esforço, na verdade o
considered
tempo foi
and dedicated a
relativamente
lot of
curto,
time
né,
and
de muito
effort.
esforço
Time was
de
actually
todos os
short, but a lot of
times,
efforts
seja de
from
estruturação,
all of
seja
the
de TI,
teams
seja de
for structuring
os
IT
times das lojas, para que, em primeiro
and the
lugar,
store
é
teams
importante que a
as
gente
well.
não altere
So that
os
first of
processos,
all,
que
what's
seja muito
important is that we
transparente com
should
os
not
nossos
modify the
vendedores,
processes. They need to be very
que a gente não
transparent
altere o
to our
nível de vendas
sales
e
team
pelo
and
contrário,
customers.
que
We
a
want
gente
to change
aumente
the
ainda
level
mais
of
esse
sales. We
novo
want to
processo.
increase
Em segundo
actually
lugar, a
with
estrutura
this
do
within
FDIC
new
ela é muito
processes,
robusta
and the
para endereçar riscos
the FIDC
estruturais, por
structures are
exemplo,
very
que o Renato
robust to
colocou.
address
Muita gente faz
risks,
nossos
as
boletos
Sinato
em
mentioned.
dinheiro na
For a
loja.
lot of people,
Então, era
pay their
extremamente
their
importante que
bills
nós
in cash at the
tivéssemos
store. So it's
a
super
estrutura de
important to have
correspondente
this
bancário em todas as nossas 1.100
structure
lojas, para que
for a
quando
bank
o cliente for
correspondent
pagar
in
em
our
dinheiro na loja, esse
1,100
dado
stores,
baixe,
that
se
whenever
remita
customer's
já
going to pay
direto
in
no
cash,
FDIC.
he can
Nós
already
colocamos aqui um instrumento
write off this on the
conosco de
FIDC.
operação,
So
uma CCB,
we already considered
um título
this
executivo transferido, que também dá
backing
uma
this up,
segurança jurídica aqui na
and this
cobrança
also gives us
bastante
some
importante.
legal
Então tem
safety as
uma
well, and
biometria digital para
that's really
100% dos
significant. So we
casos,
have like
além
a
do
digital
onboarding do cliente, que vai
biometrics for
diminuir
100% of the cases that
substancialmente
will also
ações de
reduce
fraude.
this
Então são várias
substantially when it
etapas
comes
e
to fraud.
camadas
So these are
de
different
proteção e de
phases and
segurança
levels
de vários
of
aspectos
protection and
que a gente
safety
está
from
muito
different
confiante
aspects
com essa
that we're really
implementação do FDIC, que vai
when we
efetivamente
consider
segregar
the
aqui os
deployment
riscos
of this FIDC.
corporativos do
It's going
risco
to segregate
do recebível.
the
E é
corporate
tão
risks
importante
and
que a
receivable
gente
risks, which is really important.
reduz esse
So
5 bi de
we need to
exposição de
reduce
risco
these
corporativo que nós
5
temos
billion of
junto aos bancos
exposure and
e não
corporate risks that we
fugir
have with the banks.
não é Casas Bahia
And
que está indo para o
C,
mercado de
it's
capitais.
not like
Esse, na
Casas Bahia
verdade,
is going to the
vai ser
capital
o
market.
risco
It's
dos
actually
recebíveis, caso você
here it's
acredite,
the
conheça esse ponto
risks
melhor
that's
que
in
a
the
gente, mas não
FIDC, and
é
you guys know this
diminuir
a lot
nossa
better than we do,
exposição
but
de
we
crédito
actually
como um
reduce
todo
our
para o mercado
exposure of credit
de
as
maneira
a whole
ampla. Então, é
again,
bastante positivo
in a
e
broad
cria
way.
maior
So that's very
previsibilidade aqui
positive and it creates more
para a gente.
flexibility
O segundo
for
tema
us.
da
Then the
geração de
second
caixa,
topic
realmente a
about
gente
cash
colocou
generation
bastante
is
força,
we really
e
added a
empenho e
lot of
esforço do
strength
time tributário
and
para a gente
efforts
monetizar,
on our tax
que nós
teams to
temos
monetize
bastante ativos
and
tributados, como
consider that
vocês
we have a
perceberam,
lot
que
of
vinham
tax assets,
crescendo
as
ao
you
longo dos
noticed,
últimos
that were
anos,
growing
principalmente
over
ao
the
nível
time.
ICMS,
And so,
e que
especially for
isso já vinha
ICMS,
sendo
and
realizado,
we had its
a
effort
gente colocou mais
already
ênfase
been
ainda para
taking
ver o que a gente
place with
consegue
even more emphasis
acelerar
to
nessa
see
monetização, porque
what we
esse
could
é um
do
novo
to
aspecto que
accelerate this
nosso time de
monetization,
transformação
because once again, I
colocaram
think it's
dinheiro
part of our transformation plan to consider this and we can monetize this to be able to perform this plan. So this is an important initiative and we continue to monetize this with the carve-outs and sales to third parties, and we have the second part of logistical and tax operations and how we can optimize these issues in our logistical model with something that we can complete as a whole. I think it's important also because we have this third point that also helps a lot. We talk about stocks a lot, such as cash generation, etc. But and it brings this benefit at a collateral level that's very positive because we buy less, and so we have less credit taken and we sell more, and that accelerates our debit. So by the actual nature of the operation and reduction of the stocks, this will lead to additional monetization here on our spread. So I think it's a set of things. There's not like a single initiative. We'll continue to accelerate, of course, maybe not at the same magnitude at this aspect, but we'll continue to search for efficiency. We were able to achieve 1.5 billion in the last 12 months, and we're going to try to still search for testing the operational efficiency, looking at the level of ruptures, because we also don't want this. But whatever we can optimize in the working capital as a whole is clearly going to be observed here.
Obrigado, Elcio.
Okay, perfect.
Valeu.
Thank you, Elcio. Thank you,
Valeu,
Renato.
Joel. Nossa próxima pergunta
The
é da
next
Daniela
question is from
Estudante
Danny
de
Yeager
jornalismo.
at XP.
Boa
Danny,
tarde,
you may
pessoal.
proceed.
Obrigada por pegar minha pergunta.
Nicolas,
Eu
thanks for
tenho
taking my
duas. A primeira
question.
em relação ao cenário
Actually, I have
competitivo. Eu queria
two.
ouvir de
The question is
vocês
about the
como vocês
competitive scenario, and I
têm
want
visto
to
essa
ask you guys.
dinâmica, tanto dos players talvez mais parecidos com
And
vocês em
so,
termos de sortimento, como também os
about the
novos
players,
entrantes, né,
also
nessa
when it
questão
comes
do
to
1P.
assortment
A gente tem
and
visto
the
o
new
Mercado Livre
players,
participando mais ativamente do 1P, a
we have
própria
seen
Amazon
the
também
Mercado
fazendo
Livre,
alguns movimentos mais
Amazon
enfáticos aí
also working on some
nesse
other
sentido
more
também.
emphatic
Como vocês têm
movements in this
sentido um pouco
sense as well.
esse
So,
cenário?
how have you felt
E
this
uma segunda,
scenario?
até
And
baseada na
also the
notícia que
second
saiu, né,
point,
ontem sobre a
based on
saída
the
das
on the
categorias de 1P,
news that
se
came
não me
out
engano eram
yesterday about
23
the 1P
semanas na
categories, I think
matéria.
there were
Primeiro, se
23
essas 23
mentioned
já
in the
foi feito um
article,
ajuste ou se
and
tem mais
have these 23
categorias que
already
vocês
performed
pretendem
adjustments with,
mapear ou sair,
or are there
e
more
também como
categories that
que
you
isso se
plan to map
encaixa em termos
out?
de estratégia da companhia
And how
como
this would
proposta
fit
de
in
valor mesmo,
when it
se
comes to the
a
company's
ideia é vocês
strategy as
focarem
a
mais em
value
1P e aí
proposition.
ser omni, né,
Do you think you're
tanto
going to focus more
as
on
lojas como
1P and be more
online, e aí o
omni-channel
3P talvez
with the
perder um
stores,
pouquinho de
and
relevância, enfim,
maybe
como que é essa
3P would lose a
estratégia
bit
do
of
que a
relevance?
companhia
How do you
quer
imagine the
ser, e aí também em
strategy
termos
of
de
what the company wants to
posicionamento
be,
versus os
and
demais.
also when it
Obrigada.
comes to the
Boa, Dani. Obrigado pela pergunta.
positioning versus
A
others?
gente tem visto
Okay,
um
thank you
cenário
for the question.
competitivo
We're
bastante
seeing this
racional,
competitive
tá? Acho que
scenario
ninguém está em
that's very
condições de
rational.
fazer
I
grandes
think no one
apostas,
can
está todo mundo sendo um pouco mais
perform like
racional.
major bets.
Obviamente,
Everyone's
né,
being
o
a
que
lot more
nos
rational.
impacta
But of
mais são as
course,
plataformas
what
genéricas.
impacts us
Elas
more
estão
are not the
começando e
generic
sendo vocais, já
platforms.
tiveram
They
movimentos de vir,
are
voltar, vir,
starting off.
voltar.
We already had some
Obviamente,
movements
Black
coming.
é um
Of
momento
course,
onde
Black
se vende
is
bastante
a
das
moment where
categorias
you
core,
sell a lot of
onde
our
o maior valor
category.
agregado é que a
So
pessoa
the items that
espera
have the
para
greatest
comprar.
added
Então você
value,
não
where
tem uma
people wait
mudança no volume
for
de
Black
carrinho do
Friday to be
celular
able
na
to
Black.
buy. So you don't have like a big
Agora, de
shift in
telefone de
this
telas
volume, but
e de
from
linha
phones
branca,
and
por exemplo, isso tem
screens and all of
bastante
that,
volume na Black.
then you have a
Então,
lot of
chama atenção
volumes
para
as well.
todo mundo
So
anunciar
this
desse
does
jeito.
call our
Acho que as
attention when you
estratégias
announce it like
responderem bem
this.
com
So
uma
I think the
agenda
strategies, we
consistente
still don't
e
see
fazer
someone
isso
having
por
such a
moda
consistent
na
strategy,
categoria core.
and that's something that
A competição
gets
com
in
os
the
players
way in the
regionais
core
e com
categories. The
players
competition
mais
with the player region,
também
with the
tem
regional
lojas
players and the
online nas
retailers
categorias core, tem
that
sido
also have
racional tanto no
omnichannels
parcelamento
has
quanto nas
been
condições
rational
comerciais.
in
Então, acho que a gente está
e-commerce
todo mundo na mesma
conditions,
página. Quando
and
a gente olha
we're
para
all
a
on the same
mudança de categorias, a
page.
gente tinha
And when we
falado já,
look
né, que a
at
gente apresentou lá desde
a shift
agosto,
in
que eram
categories,
23 categorias,
when we
e no slide lá no
presented,
plano está bem claro que são
we have
23 categorias,
20
de
some
ticket
categories,
médio
23,
mais baixo, então que é realmente um perfil de plataformas
a
menores,
lower
e a
average
gente
ticket,
migrou para o 3P. Então, produtos de limpeza,
and we
bidumes,
migrated to 3P.
itens gerais que a gente migrou para lá. A gente não vê
And
outros
some
itens
other
migrando para
general
o 3P.
items
Então, o
we
que que é a
migrated.
estratégia da companhia? A gente vai continuar crescendo
And so what's
3P,
the
mas
strategy? We're
voltado
going
para
to
o core.
continue to grow in
Esse a
3P,
gente já
but
está
we're going to be focused more
incentivo
on
no Pro.
core.
Por quê?
So we've even
Pensando na estratégia
incentivized
do
this a
Pro,
bit
se eu
because you can
comprava por
imagine the
50
purchase
modelos de
strategy if we
geladeira, eu
were
não
buying
preciso comprar
50
50.
different
Eu posso
models
comprar
of
de um fornecedor, tá?
refrigerators. You
Hoje
don't
vai
have to
ter
buy
mais
50, you
de
buy
um, hoje
from
tem
one
vários.
supplier.
Mas de um,
So
às vezes
now we
tem
have
10,
many.
que é onde eu ganho mais
But
dinheiro, e eu
sometimes you
posso
have like
crescer tanto no
10,
volume
whereas
quanto
where
no
you're making
custo,
more money, you can concentrate
e
volumes
os
and have
outros
very
eu
competitive
posso vender
conditions.
3P.
So with the others,
Então, na
I
loja,
could sell
o
3P.
vendedor tira o pedido e
So at the
entrega na
store,
casa do
for example,
cliente. Isso
let's
acontece.
file
O
the
nosso 3P,
rather
50%
order there and delivered at the
Então,
customer's
para
house. For
70% de
3P,
categoria
50% was already
relacionada ao
core
core.
categories, but
E, obviamente,
um,
acessórios
of course,
das
you have
categorias
these
core, como
accessories
fones de ouvido, de
of the
capinhas, de
core
películas, isso tudo pode ser
categories, right?
3P,
So when we talk
e que a
about
gente pode vender isso
earphones
como
and
3P.
all of this
O
can be
3P
3P and we can
generalista,
sell it
a
as
gente
3P.
também não vai
A more
acabar com ele. A gente
generalist
tem
3P, of
bastante
course,
SKU.
we will
O que a gente fez foi
end it, right?
parar
We have
de
a lot of
subsidiar.
SKUs. We
A
stopped
gente
doing
investir
was
Google e
stop
gastar para
subsidizing.
investir,
So
dar frete grátis e
investing
fazer
not
todo
too
o comercial
much,
de faturamento sem
providing
juros
free freight,
com
and performing all these
microempreendedores não
conditions of
faz sentido.
installments with no
Agora, em parceria
interest
com o seller, o
with the
seller
company
bancando,
paying for it
faz
doesn't make
sentido e a gente
sense,
não tem
right? So
problema com isso. Então, a gente está vendo até que o 3P tem possibilidade
we
de
have
crescimento.
seen
O terceiro
that
trimestre ainda
3P
cresceu.
has
Claro que tem um
possibilities for
efeito de
growth, and
migração, mas a
you can
ideia
see there's
nossa
also
não
this
é a
migration
gente
effect, but
realmente
our
ficar
idea is
investindo
not
bastante para crescer o 3P. Quando a gente pensa
investing
na nossa proposta de
too
valor,
much
é ser um
3P.
player
Consider
especialista nas
our value
categorias core,
proposition,
ter
it's about
referência
being a
nas categorias
specialist in
core. Então,
core
se nós somos o
categories.
maior vendedor
So
de
if we're the
televisão, de
biggest
celular, de
when it comes to
móvel, de
selling
linha branca
television,
e
cell
tudo, você
phones,
pega no offline, não tem
furniture,
dúvida nenhuma. Somando no
and
offline e
when you look at
online,
the
a gente
offline,
sobe
when you
de
add all of
primeiro, às vezes cai
this,
para segundo num mês, volta para primeiro, então nessas categorias, e algumas delas é
um,
primeiro constante. Isso aqui é nosso dever, ser referência, ter
we can see
escala, ser
this is our
bastante
duty,
competitivo
right? To
e
be
continuar ganhando core.
have
Ou seja, é
reference
um
and
P
scale,
sem
being
I,
very competitive. So
maximizando a geração de
whether
valor
it's
da
1P
companhia,
or
sendo
3P,
3P não tem capital de giro tão
maximizing
caro,
our
então
value
ele tem
generation.
algumas vantagens do ponto de
And
vista de
so we
ROI
have some
e que para
advantages
alguns
also when
itens
it
pode
comes to
fazer
ROIC,
sentido.
and for some
Os itens
items this could make
generalistas, como eu
sense.
tenho uma base de clientes
First
gigante, 30
items,
milhões de
since
clientes
we have
ativos,
a
100 milhões
huge
de clientes
customer base,
usuários,
30 million
ele vai
active
vender. Então eu
customers,
continuo vendendo
then it's going
cerveja,
to sell.
continuo vendendo
So we
fralda,
continue
continuo
to sell
vendendo. Agora, sem
beer,
um
diapers, and
incentivo de
all of
Google, eu posso ter um
but
investimento?
without
Posso,
an
mas não é de corte
incentive.
capital.
Could I have
Então, se o
investments?
meu comissionamento é
Yes, but it's
13%
been
com o
added
seller,
cost that I can
pô,
fit in.
vai me
So
custar
if
na
my commission is
produção, vai me custar
13% of the
2,
seller,
3,
then my
quanto eu posso
operation maybe
gastar que tem
costs
ainda uma
2,
margem de
3. How
contribuição?
much can I
E aí você vai
spend
fazer,
to
mas
have
não
a
tem
contribution margin?
parcelamento, não tem, como é que
It
é, o
depends,
frete,
right? Are you
se
going to
for
have
um serviço é
installments
desse,
and
então eu
all?
faço um
What's the
pouquinho,
freight
então eu
like?
ganho um pouquinho
So
mais.
when I work
Então
on
aí me dá a
fulfillment, I
margem
make
para
a little
investir um
more.
pouquinho mais.
But
O fulfillment
the
tem crescido
margins to
bastante, quando a gente
invest a little
colocou na
more.
nossa apresentação,
Fulfillment has
foi o
grown a lot,
fulfillment
so we consider this in our
multi-marketplace, mar
presentation,
aberto, tem crescido muito
both
e o
the
nosso fulfillment crescido
multi-marketplace.
bastante.
And
Acho que tem um ponto que eu não comentei aqui nas principais mensagens, né, mas assim, o
there's
nível de
one point I didn't
serviço
mention
nosso,
here, but the
tanto no
level of
1P quanto no
service when
3P,
it comes to
ele melhorou
1P
muito.
um,
Eu
improved
confio
a
em
lot.
vocês, eu comento aqui no só
So
informalmente, mas
I
muito
also
feliz desde que eu cheguei
mentioned
aqui,
that
obviamente, falei, agora tem que
ever
comprar
since
tudo
I
na Casas Bahia.
arrived,
Se quiser, tem que dar um
oh,
play
now
de
you
semana
have to
aqui,
buy
que é
everything
brigada,
at
viu,
Casas
galera?
Bahia.
No início tinha briga,
You have
porque
to
estamos em
see what
abril,
you can
maio,
do.
tinha
But in the
briga,
beginning,
você
people
olhava
were
o preço
fighting
muito
over it. In
diferente,
April and
prazo
May,
de
if you
entrega
look
muito
at
diferente.
prices and delivery
Hoje não
very
é mais
different.
assim. Então, se vocês olharem
Deadlines for
assim, do
delivery
ponto de
were
vista
also
de
very
mix
different. So now it's not
e
like
de
say
nível de
we're good at the mix
serviços, a
point
gente
for
está
level
bastante
of
competitivo.
service.
Só que do
We
ponto de vista
are
de
very
foco da
competitive.
companhia,
But from
nosso
a
investimento
focus
se
perspective in the
voltará para
company,
o
our
core da
investments
companhia, para as
are
categorias
going to be
core.
focused
O
on the
resto será
company's
mais
core
orgânico
and
e
these
pela nossa
categories. The rest
escala,
will be more
ele tende a
organic,
continuar a
and
existir
considering
e
our
ter algum
scale,
crescimento,
it tends
mas
to
um crescimento
exist
mais
and have a bit
orgânico.
of growth,
É isso
but
que a
it's
gente
going to
está vendo.
be a more normalized growth. And this is what we're seeing.
Não, excelente, super claro. Obrigada pelas
Excellent.
respostas.
Thank
Obrigado,
you.
Dani.
Very clear. Thank you,
Obrigado,
Danny.
Dani. Nossa próxima
Thank you.
pergunta é da
Our
Irma
next
Sgarz,
question is
Goldman
from
Sachs.
Irma
Irma, por favor.
Scards from Goldman Sachs.
Não foi irmão, não.
Agora foi.
Oh,
Vocês estão
sorry.
me
I think
escutando? Sim.
we put in the wrong person.
Tá.
Okay, now it's
Obrigada por
Irma.
pegarem a minha pergunta. Eu
Great.
queria
Thank you for
perguntar
taking my
primeiramente sobre
question. I want to ask
a
about,
mudança
first of all,
na parceria de
on
cartão
the
co-branded.
shift of the
Vocês
partnership
já
with the
destacaram, me
co-branded
explicaram, não
card.
reclamamos lá no curto prazo no release, mas eu queria entender um
So I
pouco
don't
como
talk
que
about
você
non-recurring in
pensaria
the short
sobre essa
term,
parceria mais para
but
frente
how are you
e
thinking
para
about this
eventuais
partnership
custos e
and
gastos
possible
impactos
expenses
one-off,
or
talvez ainda no
impacts
quarto tri.
one-off
E,
in the fourth quarter
e a minha
still?
segunda
And
pergunta é só para falar um
my
pouco
second question is
sobre
just
o
about
crediário. Pelo que eu entendi
the financial
pelos
letters, but
comentários
what I
anteriores, vocês
saw and
estão
understood with the previous
ainda com uma
comments, you
postura
were
relativamente
still having
conservadora.
a
Eu vejo que
very
tem agora
relatively
maior
conservative approach,
flexibilidade,
and
acho que
now
vocês
you
explicaram
have
isso
more
muito bem com o
flexibility,
VP.
and you explained this really
Mas pelo
well.
que eu entendi, vocês ainda estão focando
But
nas
by
classes
what
de
I
risco
understood, you're still focused
mais
on the risk
seguras.
categories that are a
Então,
little
eu
safer.
queria entender um pouco esse
So
momento
I
de
just want to
avaliar possível
understand
risco
about this
dentro
moment
do
you're
fundo
in and this
imobiliário e também
risk
fazer um
appetite
balanço
within
entre
the
esses
buy
dois
now pay
produtos
later.
com branded e
Also,
crediário.
this
Essa é um
balance
público do
between
fundo 3.
both products with branded,
Obrigado, Igor.
co-branded, and buy now
Vamos
pay
lá.
later. I know it's different
Começando pelo
publics. Okay,
cartão,
thanks,
né?
Irma. Thanks.
O cartão, tudo. A gente
First,
fez um
about the
contrato novo,
card,
né? Feito no final do ano
we had
passado.
worked on
E
this new
ele tem já uma
contract,
perspectiva de meta e
and there's a
resultados.
perspective
Até a
for
gente
targets
colocar
and
o track,
results. until we put this on track, we're still a little bit lower than the estimate. So when you consider the performance for the third quarter, we understood that it would make sense to work on this provision. But if you look at the volumes for October, there are already numbers that are a lot stronger than what we had done before. So we had this second generation platform. We improved the process of launch new card with the Elo Casas Bahia Fast card. That's also market interest. And we have some levers that really show that we'll get back to the target. So look at this. This maybe even is excessive conservatism, but I want to look at this for the second, third, first quarter and have the risk of having to do this up ahead, but we prefer to have this provision because of the reversal of this provision. Look at the fourth quarter, then we want to make this provision. So there could be some forecasts, some provisions, but maybe not as big. But we're working on not having to have this finished in 2024. We won't have this, and we'll be operating with our goals and our plan for the company is to really be able to cover this and work towards a reversal. But to be very conservative here, we're still trying to keep what we mentioned in this. So it's a correct way. If I'd rather correct this in 2023 to start off with possible upside potential. So this plan that doesn't allow us to have mistakes. We can only get it right. So that's why we're a little more conservative. But this is related to your second question. We talk about the Pay later. We understand that there's a lot of opportunities for growth. We know how to do things well. We provide credit to a profile that's not very normal. And to receive credit, so this is differential. And being able to control this, but we'll always be very careful. I'll always have a lot of discipline. So with credit, you can never joke around. And although we have this team that is technically dominating this credit topic, we have a really good model of loyalty from our customers. And this is very unique. Just look at the performance of the Buy Now Pay Later versus other credit products in the market. But we want to be conservative and we want to grow in our rates. I'd rather have growth targets a little less aggressive, but not have any risks than the opposite. So the appetite for risks is low and appetite for good business, of course, is always high.
Perfeito,
Obrigado.
Okay, thank you, Bruno. Perfect, thanks.
Obrigado, Irma. Nossa próxima
Thank
pergunta
you,
é do
Irma.
Andrew.
Our next
Please,
question
Andrew,
is from
go ahead.
Andrew.
Hey, thanks very much for the question. I'm curious about the e-commerce behavior around the stores you've closed, any effect it's had on GMV, and based on this, if it changes your view about what the right store count more or less could be longer term. And then second, just quickly on 3P take rate, we saw it continue to move up in the quarter. So curious your view on how much room there is to increase take rates from here. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Andrew.
Obrigado, Andrew. Vou responder e você tem a tradução.
Falando do B2C, né, do 1P,
So about B2C and 1P related to the closing of the stores, I don't see a connection in the drop of volumes from B2C and 1P related to the closing of the stores. Closing of stores is something that's very one-off and it can impact the but in the GMV of the physical stores, brick and mortars, of course, you lose this, but this is kind of offset by the stores that we had close to the stores. So we don't migrate everything, but we do migrate from 40 to 60% of the store. And so from a margin perspective, it made sense to have these stores closed too. The other ones we're already mapping out. There's some that we think really make sense, but others we still want to clarify our plan about, and there's a recovery. So about the second question, we understand there is an opportunity for improvements, not only in negotiations and increasing take rates, but also offering services. So when there's more take rate, this should consider an increase. And so normally I charge this up. And so with fulfillment, it tends to increase when I add more services. I can increase this. From a market and competitive perspective, we understand we're at a level That's too ideal, not ideal yet, but it does allow for some growth with margins for the sellers and profitability for us. So the growth of the 3P is, I know this was not that directed, but of course it helps with the growth of revenue because it's the fact that the revenue is growing. That means that I have a take rate that's so competitive. If GMV starts suffering a bit, that means I'm a little bit, I might be charging too much. So we know that there's room to migrate categories to 3P and some items of the core that make sense to migrate in the community maximize our 3P revenue. And so some of them, if we keep their commissions at above average. And depending on how I can do this, I could have a take rate. It's not a part of a structured plan where we see like a material change in the take rate of the company. Okay, thank you very much, Andrew.
Nossa próxima pergunta vai ser do Eric, do Santander.
Our next question is from Eric at Santander. Please, you may proceed.
Boa tarde, pessoal. Obrigado por pegar nossas perguntas.
Hey guys, good afternoon. Thanks for taking my questions. On our side, I want to look at 3P as well and explore this a bit more in our strategy optimization. When it comes to the sellers, you want to track
numa dinâmica, né, entre trazer mais sellers
considering a
grandes ou
dynamic
sellers
with
pequenos
more
e aqui dentro,
bigger
né,
sellers or smaller sellers.
onde como talvez se continuar se diferenciando aí nos
Or if you
sellers
would
menores,
continue
né,
to
vocês consigam
differentiate yourself with a smaller
continuar
of higher
trazendo
tick,
esses sellers ou também
continue to
aumentando,
bring
né,
in
a conversão desses
sellers,
dentro
also
da
increasing the
plataforma de
conversion of the
vocês versus
sellers in this
outras
platform
plataformas. Obrigado.
Versus your platform or others. Great question, Eric. In our vision, we already have the amount of sellers that's quite significant. So we have a lot of SKUs and a lot of sellers. But we understand that actually there's an improvement in the conversion, even if you work with more discipline in the amount of sellers and the amount of offerings for the same item. So having only the best offerings is better than having all of them. And when you look at the level of service, especially. So we're not going to risk the company's reputation again with sellers that generate costs because you have to pay off possible operational mistakes. So when you are a platform that's too generalist, you have to invest a lot, and if there's any problem, you just pay for it and have to solve it. So that's not our idea. Our appetite is a little smaller. We want to have 3P that's more concentrated and high quality, and it grows organically and not with investments. So the investments of the core being to kind of impact 3P because for customers, they don't really know what 3P is. So when they go in and research, I want to buy a refrigerator, they see and he sees this model of a refrigerator and he says, look, automatically he's going to see this in 3P. He'll buy this, and quite frequently I'm going to be delivering to him, but it's a 3P. And this is worth, this is valid to television and so as well as properties, where there's a lot of furniture, and then it makes sense to have 3P. So online, 1P and 3P kind of mixes up a lot. When you have fixed capital and you have this additional margin, it pays off capital plus logistics and all of this, or is it better to do 3P? So our main focus here is a lot more category based in our core categories than 1-3 versus 3P. This is just about what commission you have, what's the cost, and then we optimize this in the physical stores. Then of course you have this still accelerated and that changes to maximize performance, and that's where our strength is. So when you see our product in people stores, and so we've been performing a lot better, and we have possibilities to continue to evolve a lot.
Perfeito, Renato. Obrigado aí pela resposta.
Okay, thank you. Perfect. Okay, we have no other questions now, but there's one point from Andrew that maybe you could finish answering, which is about the store network in the long term. And then you can have the comments and finish. Okay, thank you. About the store footprint, thank
A
you.
gente, no longo prazo, né, a gente espera sim
In the
crescer
long
o número
term,
de
we
lojas. A gente
expect to
entende que o mercado
grow
como um
the
todo, ele
footprint of
tem um
stores.
crescimento
We
um
understand that
pouco
the
maior
market
no
as a whole
online,
has some
mas
growth that's even
considerando
a
as
little greater in
vantagens
the
da
online.
companhia
But if you
e
look at
como
the
a gente
strong
sabe
point,
trabalhar a loja
see
e as
how we
oportunidades que a
know how
gente
to
tem no
work with the
mercado offline,
stores.
sei lá, mesmo em market share no mercado offline, market share
If
nosso é
you
muito
look at
grande,
the
que é de
market
30%, a
share
gente
in the
só vem
offline market, it's pretty
regiões
big.
fora do
But
Sudeste, a gente tem 12,
if you look at
enquanto
regions
aqui
out of the
bem mais
Southeast,
de
we're at
40.
12,
Então,
and here it's
a
a lot more than
oportunidade de
35 or 40.
crescimento
So the opportunity for
do
growth
nosso market share
in
no
our market
Centro-Oeste, no
share
Norte, no Nordeste do
and the
país é
Midwest
muito
region, North
grande,
and Northeast, is
inclusive abrindo
really big.
lojas. Então a gente
And
entende,
actually
quando a gente fala lá do último
opening
slide
up
nosso,
stores.
lá que está na
So
apresentação do vídeo,
when we look
a
at
gente
our
tem a
last
oportunidade
slide,
de abrir bastante loja
we
física, a
see
gente
that
tem
there's an
200
opportunity to
cidades
open up a
mapeadas,
lot
que
of physical
deveria
stores.
ter
We
uma
have
loja da Casas Bahia.
200 cities
A
mapped
gente
out
só não
and
vai
that
abrir isso
should have a
agora
Casas
porque a gente
Bahia
só
store,
vai
and we're just not
começar
going to open
a
this
expansão
now because we're
depois
only
que o
going to
nosso
start
fluxo de
expansion
caixa tiver
once our
superior
cash
ao pagamento
flow
de juros, ou
is
seja,
a
estiver
lot
gerando caixa para a
higher
companhia.
than
Aí
is
esse é
actually
adicional que
generating
cabe
cash
aos
for the
sócios
company.
investir na
Then
abertura
this additional
de
cash I
lojas.
can of
Então
course
isso deve
invest in
acontecer mais lá para o
opening
fim de
stores.
24, início de
And
2025,
so
onde a gente começa a expandir
this is in the beginning of
lojas. Isso
2024
sem
when we
contar,
start
obviamente, com a
expanding
transformação do
stores,
mercado
and
macro, né?
this
Se o
of
mercado
course
melhora,
is
a gente
not
recupera
just
muito
doing
mais rápido
macro
e aí pode antecipar
transformations,
alguma
right?
coisa. Mas cenário base,
And
a
so
gente
then, of
começa a
course, we
expandir
can
mais lá
anticipate
para
this. So the
2025.
base
Mas a
scenario will
companhia deve
be
crescer um pouco
expand
mais
in
no offline do que no
2025.
online,
The
se você olhar
company
no
should
médio,
grow a little more in
máximo
the
de 3
offline
a
than
5
on the
anos, esse
online if
crescimento
you look at the
maior
mid and long term,
no offline.
and where
A
our
gente está
growth
preparando, a
is
gente está falando,
mostly in the
obviamente, de
offline.
longo
So
prazo para a
we're
companhia também,
preparing a
já está em
plan for the long
discussão,
term,
já tivemos um bom
and this is
alinhamento com o
already under
C-Level nas
discussion. We
alavancas de
have
longo
pretty
prazo,
good
até de longo
alignment
prazo da
at this
companhia.
level with the
Então, a
levers in the mid to
transformação
long
de curto
term.
prazo ela é essencial
And
e a
so
gente não
the
está procurando
transformation in the
trazer
short
ainda
term
para o
is
longo prazo
essential, and
para
we're not
garantir
trying
muito
to bring this
foco
long
na
term yet
transformação do
because
nosso
we really
fluxo de
want to
caixa
guarantee the
e do curto
focus
prazo.
and
E a gente
transformation
entrando no
of our
segundo
cash flow
semestre
in
de
the short
24, a gente
As we
pretende
enter
sim
the
dar um
second quarter of
disclosure do plano
2024,
estratégico da
we should have
companhia,
some
com
disclosure on the
todas as
strategic
alavancas
plan
que a
of the
gente
company,
enxerga para
with all
maximizar a
of the
geração de
levers we
valor, que vão
see to
possibilitar a gente
maximize
chegar na nossa
value
ambição de ser
that will allow
referência em
us to reach
ROIC
our
e
ambition
geração
of
de valor
being
no
a
mercado. A
reference
gente
in
tem
ROIC
consciência
and
de
in
que para ser
cash rich in the
referência em geração de
market. We
valor, a
are
gente
aware
precisa ter
that
um
to
ROIC
become a
robusto,
reference,
geração de
we must have a
caixa
robust ROIC,
e crescimento.
robust cash generation,
Então, nós não
and
estamos
growth.
desprezando essa
So
terceira variável.
we're not
Nós apenas
giving up on the third
empurramos essa
variable.
terceira
We are
variável
just
lá para
pushing this third
2025 para a gente
element
poder
a little
discutir as
more towards
alavancas de
2025
crescimento
so we can discuss the
após
growth
a
levers
transformação do fluxo de caixa da
after
companhia,
our
que a gente está
transformation of
vivendo
the
já
company's
outro
cash
momento.
flow,
Então,
and
de
we're
novo, eu
already
aproveito
experiencing
aqui
this
para
other
agradecer
moment.
a
So
participação de
once again, I
todos.
want to thank you
Quem
all
não
for your
viu os vídeos, o
participation.
material
If you have
convida a
not seen the
assistir,
videos and all the
está
material,
bastante
I invite you
completo
all to
e,
watch.
obviamente, ficamos
It's
todos à
really
disposição,
cool
toda a nossa
and
equipe de RI,
full of
todos nós
interesting
aqui,
information. And of
para
course, our IR
esclarecer
team is
eventuais dúvidas.
available as well
Muito obrigado a todos,
to
um ótimo dia
clarify
e vamos que vamos.
questions.
Black
So
Friday
thank you
está
all very
aí, vamos
much.
comprar, viu,
Good
gente?
day.
Com condição
Black
imperdível,
Friday's
a
there,
edição
and
Black
let's go.
Gift Black já está na
We
tela.
have
Vamos que vamos, um
incredible
abraço.
conditions and prices. Let's buy a lot, okay? See you.